So hello and welcome to the Data Explorers Market Update. I'm Will Duff Gordon. Today I'm wearing a tie because I was just now on Bloomberg News talking about GM, but that's another story. Although at this rate I'm going to have to buy some more shirts and tie combinations. Today I'm not writing about satellites because when doing research into iPads and smartphones and technology, lurking in the background is kind of how do these satellite communications companies work? And we often get asked about Inmarsat, which is a FTSE 100 satellite communications provider who has a big strategic stake with a hedge fund, US hedge fund called Harbinger. They did particularly well in the credit crisis. Anyway, so short interest is at a sort of 3-year low in Inmarsat. It was quite high going into the credit crunch, in fact pre-credit crunch, and institutional investors have been buying more and more, and they have a sort of 52-week high in terms of how many shares in Inmarsat are owned by funds who lend. So very positive sentiment towards Inmarsat. What do? Founded in 1979, they have 3 geostationary satellites, and they can offer pretty much always on satellite communication. They're just starting to offer satellite phones for you and I. Well, not quite you and I, but if we were in the desert. They also sell it to ships and aircraft as a sort of residual business, and they've got an interesting new venture with, they've created a company called Light Squared, which has the ability to sell sort of always-on Wi-Fi connectivity across various states in America, which they can then rent to people like AT&T and Verizon. So quite an interesting business. Sounds pretty good to me anyway. There's a little bit of short selling in Iridium because Iridium is a slightly smaller company. It mainly provides satellite communications to the US government, which may render it slightly exposed if the US government's going to be sort of maybe at some point cutting back on its costs a little bit and spending a bit less money on things like that. I don't know. It does have 66 low orbit satellites to maintain. Maybe that's quite costly. But anyway, the data shows a big leap in short selling in June, and it is about 9%. And obviously that stands out because the rest of the sector, it's very, very positive sentiment. SES is a French listed company which sort of owns the Astra satellite, which is currently broadcasting 150 channels in high definition, and we know that everyone's getting more and more into their high definition HD TVs, so I'd imagine that Astra are doing pretty well. Not surprisingly, institutional ownership is at 17.5%, which is at a 2-year high. It's a little bit of short selling, but it's not significant, but we shall keep watching that. Finally, just going back to Harbinger again, they have had some issues with some redemptions, but they've been really creative. They've listed a company which has very low short interest in it, Harbinger Group in America, and they've issued actually a corporate bond paying 10% yield, a 5-year corporate bond, and that has been taken up quite heavily by those funds that lend, showing faith in their business model. So quite interesting looking at the satellite sector. If you want to kind of look at it on paper, it is at dataexplorers.com/news.